Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our Elliot Bell Awards presentation. Thank you very much for coming. Cesare would like me to remind you that our Twitter handle is @NIFWA and that there is a hashtag for this event. It's Elliot Bell, the way it is spelled on the front of your program. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, there was a printing error in the program. You will notice that I am, among other things, no longer the vice president. This is not who we're giving the award to. I'm very sorry. And I'm going to let Cesare come up here and carry it from there. Thank you all for coming.
The one year that introductory remarks matter more than most. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Cesare Podkul. I'm a finance reporter at ProPublica. And on behalf of the New York Financial Writers Association, I want to welcome you to tonight's event. I chair our Elliot Bell Award Committee, and I'm glad to see such a big turnout. In fact, this is the largest audience to witness an Elliot Bell Award, period. Except that might actually be a fact, because we actually ran out of space. We had to tell some folks, I'm sorry, you can't come. But luckily, we will record this. There'll be a video of the event, and so for all posterity, everyone will know how great storytelling is done. But before I introduce our guest of honor, a quick commercial break. Many of you may know the New York Financial Writers Association from our annual Financial Follies dinner that we sponsor every November. Mark your calendars. This year, it's November 17th at the New York Hilton. Well, what you may not know is that we do much more than just the Follies, including networking events, professional development seminars, book talks, of which Barry has done one, and much more. In fact, earlier this month, we gave out $30,000 of scholarships to students at NYU and CUNY, and now we have at least one scholarship recipient here. Can you please stand? There she is, yeah. There you go. She'll be interning at Reuters this summer. Others will be at Bloomberg, and we've arranged for them to have coffee and network with the reporters at those news organizations already. So as you can see, nurturing the next generation of business and financial reporters is one of the core missions of our organization. So if you haven't already, please consider becoming a member. You'll get access to great events just like this one for $60 a year. Or if you're a student, an introductory offer of just $10. And if all you're interested in is free food and booze, don't worry. Trust me when I say they'll get an ROI on that as well. Just email contact@nyfwa.org and we'll get you signed up. That's contact@nyfwa.org. Okay, now on to the fun stuff. The association gives out the Elliot Bell Award each year to honor a journalist who has made a significant contribution to the field of financial journalism. Named after our association's founding president and longtime New York Times reporter, Elliot Bell, the prize has become sort of a lifetime achievement award filled with many high-ranking editors who have made it to the top of mastheads at various news publications. Which is perhaps why you won't be surprised that when I called Barry Newman to congratulate him on being selected as this year's winner, he seemed puzzled. He first said he doesn't really fancy himself as much of a financial writer, and then he asked me if he had to wear a suit. I said, yes, Barry, you must wear a suit. And let me explain to you some of the many, many reasons why your work stands out as an example for business and financial writers everywhere. Barry got his start in the news business the old-fashioned way, as a copy boy and a news clerk at the New York Times. In 1970, he jumped to the Wall Street Journal, where he started off writing about non-ferrous metals for the paper's commodities news pages. It wasn't the most glamorous beat in the world, but he got some advice from his editors. They told him that if you want to write for page one, go out there and get color. Barry took this advice to heart, and within 3 years, the journal's New York bureau chief, Glyn Mapes, took him aside and said, "You're off metals." Barry then asked, "Well, what am I going to do next?" And he answered, "Whatever you want." Over the next 4 decades, Barry enjoyed a career at the Wall Street Journal unlike any other, not least because he never left the paper and he never worked as an editor. Instead, Barry used his freedom, his bottomless curiosity, and his creativity to report for the Journal from more than 65 countries and most states in the USA. Barry's career took him from pickled herring caves in Sweden to the front lines of communism's fall in Eastern Europe to Russian baths in New York City, twice, in fact. But Barry did much more than witness history for the paper. As he freely confesses in his book, News to Me, out in newsstands now, you can buy a copy, or bookstores rather, sorry, he actively tried to run away from it. When I handed a copy of the book to Paul Steiger, the journal's longtime former managing editor, Paul immediately zeroed in on a sentence that neatly sums up Barry's approach. News excited me from age 12 to 24. After that, we drifted apart. Rather than running towards scrums with powerful figures or press conferences to shout out questions, Barry would go the opposite way and find a unique angle or character. The result was a story that you could find nowhere else but on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, in leading page one news stories, as well as the paper's signature A-head section, saved specifically for colorful feature writing. Paul Steiger said the approach made Barry one of the all-time best writers at the Wall Street Journal. And he had it, that's really saying something because there have been a lot of really excellent writers at the Wall Street Journal over the years. It's also an approach that financial and investigative reporters can learn a lot from, since uncovering financial bubbles and fraudsters often means looking where others don't. Indeed, when I invited Barry to come visit ProPublica to share his secret sauce with our newsroom in 2015, we had a full house just like we do today. Our editor-in-chief, Stephen Engelberg, read aloud from just one of the many A-heads that illustrates Barry's genius for capturing scenes that no one else had. And I will do the same now. I'm going to try an accent here because this is in Albania. Microwave oven? I have heard of these, Yili Hika says. It is in a song by Dire Straits. We go move this refrigerator, we got to move this microwave oven. By the way, what is microwave oven? So began a 1991 dispatch by Barry about just how far behind on the times Albania had become during decades of communism. By the time Barry retired from the Journal in 2013, he was known as the king of the A-head. More importantly, though, his colleagues recall him as someone who took younger journalists under his wing and helped them improve their craft, or gave feedback on story ideas or copy, a key trait that we look for in our Elliot Bell Award recipients. As for his own copy, Barry is the most intimidating person to edit and the easiest person to edit, recalled Carrie Dolan, a page one editor at the Journal. Intimidating because his reporting was just so good, and easy because if you want more, it's already in his notebook, and he'll tell you why you don't need it, Dolan said. Often, it was Barry who'd fight for more space in the paper. When a Skedline in 2010 listed one of his pieces at a 999 word length, he wrote back to the editor and to ask, what, they couldn't give you one more word? He ended up getting 66 extra words on that story. Newman was defiant and got his way with me if I couldn't talk him out of doing exactly what he wanted to do. He should be sanctified, said David Sanford, who edited much of Barry's copy during a 35-year stint as a page one editor at the paper. Barry, I'm sorry we cannot sanctify you today, but we are plenty honored to give you this plaque and name you as our 41st recipient of the Elliot Bell Award. Congratulations. Say something.
Well, I'm totally shocked, but I guess I'm grateful. When Cesare called me.
Barry.
Oh, when Cesare called me, I thought I was being given an award for going 43 years at a financial newspaper without ever once writing a financial story. And when Cesare mentioned Glenn Mapes, my old boss, who is New York bureau chief and page one editor and London bureau chief, and I worked for him for 20 years, and I stopped working for him when he became editor of the Money and Market section. That was the end of my relationship with him. So I never did that. Never worked for him on that. And when I wrote him and told him I won this award, he wrote back, and I have it here. He said this award was, quote, comically ironic. But I got to say that I did do financial reporting. It's not fair to say that I was never a finance writer. And my first beat, as Cesare mentioned, was non-ferrous metals at the Journal. That means I was allowed to cover anything but anything but coal and steel. Those were important things. I could cover copper, zinc, lead. I did a lot of lead stories. And But I never did rare earth. I was too rare. I was allowed to do earth. Dirt. In fact, I did a dirt story only less than 10 years ago. I did a whole story on dirt. But to say that I would never write a financial story is totally wrong, because I looked it up. There's a great website at New York Public Library, and I found that I wrote a story. I wrote A Herd on the Street in 1971. You know what Herd on the Street is? That is a financial story. It was about copper. And it stuck in my mind because my lead, as I handed it in, was copper is a very good conductor, but it is a lousy investment. And Glenn Mapes changed that to poor investment. And I remember, to my point of view, that was the first straw. But, you know, I was able at the Journal to be a generalist, and that's what I was told it was necessary to get onto page one. To be a generalist meant you, first of all, in the early days, you aimed at the little old lady in Dubuque, which was the one reader that the New Yorker did not want to address. And that evolved into the dentist in Akron, which the idea was to get them interested in things that interested me. That's another thing that Glenn Mapes stuck in my brain. If you are excited about something, you can make your readers excited about that thing. And it's not a bad idea to be a generalist, because you can transmit your ideas on complex subjects to ordinary people. I remember Art Linkletter. Does anybody remember Art Linkletter? Mm-hmm. He was a guy who his theory was, if I can get this right, he wanted to know a little bit about a lot of things so as never to be boring or to be interesting at a dinner party, whatever. But he never wanted to know so much about any one thing that he would be boring. And that, that to me is the key to trying to get people to read your stories. And so I never was a specialist in anything. I went all over the place. I always was, thinking about the reader no matter where I was, being just as dumb as they were. And then when I left the Journal, I did this book and sort of interviewed myself and tried to get some idea of what I was doing, because I never really thought about that. And it also forced me over the last couple of years to start becoming associated with journalists. Because the one thing that I tried to do all my life was to avoid journalists. I have like 2 friends who are journalists. One of them is there, cleaning his glasses. I remember that line from this wonderful newspaper movie, Nothing Sacred, right? Where a guy named Charles Winnegar, he says, there's this line where he says, journalists, if the hand of God reached down into the mire, he couldn't lift one of them to the depths of degradation. But you know what? In the last couple of years, I found out that journalists aren't all that bad, and I kind of like being around them. But I've also gotten to the point where, I spent 50 years interviewing men on the street, and now I am one. And so I'm glad to get this award, although, you know what, I don't like awards. I actually wrote a story about the awards, where people get awards for making awards, and they call that their little units of success in their lives that they put up on their desks. But the one thing about this award, which is so much better, is that I didn't aim for it. I never expected it. I didn't, make some kind of adjustments to my copy in order to hope to get it. And it's sort of like my other favorite award, which was the Future Scientists of America Award, which I won when I was 16. You know where that went. So I just want to thank you, because this award is a complete surprise to me, as I'm sure it is to a lot of other people. Thank you. So, do you...